that our role as parents is not to give our kids unlimited options. Recently, I was online on this Facebook group and I saw this question that someone posed, and it was, how do you get your kids to enjoy hiking? And this lady went on to tell the story of how she wanted to go hiking because it was beautiful out and it was the summertime, but she invited her teenagers and her teenagers did not want to go because they wanted to stay home and play video games. So she was asking this question, well, do I force them? Is that okay? Like, at what age? And then you have to deal with all the ramifications of, like, well, when do you use force as a parent and other things? And then she kind of alluded to the fact that if she does invite the kids or force them, they complain the entire time they're hiking. So this whole thing is like a real tricky issue with hiking being like a unique activity for a lot of families and even for certain kids. How do you get kids into it or try it even once? So where I'm coming at this from, most of you guys that know our family know that we have hiked thousands of miles with our kids over really almost a couple decades now. And I don't want to force my kids to hike. And I think there's an option of another way besides either the kids staying home or forcing them and being like, you have to do it because I'm making you. So we're gonna talk about that third option today. And to get into this, I wanna share this story that I heard about 5 years ago that was integral to me in understanding parenting. And this is written by Dr. Henry Cloud. If you guys have heard of him, he wrote the kind of famous book called Boundaries. This story is not from that book. It was from another one of his books, but it was about this lady, and she said that she had this like boyfriend and she was not satisfied with the relationship. She says, I pay for most of the bills and I go off to work and he stays at home and plays video games, but I really love him and I like him, but I don't want to leave him and abandon him. What should I do? And what Dr. Henry Cloud said is, why don't you give him two choices and let him choose? But he doesn't get to choose what the two choices are. You get to choose those two choices. And the two choices he suggested is, one, you go and get a job within 30 days and then we stay together. Or your second choice is, you have to move out. What you're doing then is you're putting the burden on the person and saying, hey, it's the burden and the pleasure, the freedom of like, you get to choose between these two choices. And I'm really hoping that you choose this one. Like, I want to be with you, so I want you to go get a job. But what's not possible for me is to stay together, to be enabling you, paying for your video games, taking advantage of me, and me going off to work every day and fronting the bills. That's not an option anymore. And then you just have to live with whichever choice the person chooses. Now, in a similar context with parenting, I think it's all about the choices that we give our kids. So if we give our kids these two choices, hey, you can go out into the dust and the heat and physically exert yourself carrying weight and being super uncomfortable, that's choice number one, or you can stay at home and hang out in the AC and play video games and order pizza and watch movies while I'm paying for the food, the electricity, and the video games and your phone and your data plan. What do you think the kids are gonna choose? You'd be like kind of crazy in a sense, as a child at least, to choose the hiking. Like, who wouldn't choose the immediate free comfort? And I say free because usually the kids aren't paying for those things. So, as a parent, you know, I'm really sensitive to manipulative tactics. This can be bribing or coercion or threatening. But one of the things that's helped me is to redefine that our role as parents is not to give our kids unlimited options. And for some reason, I feel like living in America, there's this kind of parenting narrative that has kind of slipped through that says the best parents are the ones that allow every opportunity for their kid, both with like a professional sense, like you need to allow your kids to be professional baseball players or astronauts or whatever they want to whatever college, no matter how much it costs. Or on the other side, you owe your kids all the conveniences and entertainments that their peers have, which could be video games, it could be phones, it could be data plans, it could be sports teams and lessons, or whatever it would be. And that you're a good parent if the more access you give your kids to all those things, the more choices, basically. Well, I don't believe that for us. That's not what defines me being a good parent to my kids. For me, the best parenting I can give is not giving my kids the most options, but giving them the best options that I have access to. And then helping them process the pros and cons of each option. So let me explain how this gets a little bit tricky with the hiking scenario. Instead of giving my kids unlimited options, very similar to the Henry Cloud story, I want to kind of frame up two options. Because I'm the one that pays for the house. I'm the one that pays for, the electricity and the data and the food. So to a certain degree, not only do I have the responsibility of deciding how that money gets spent, and that it gets spent in the way that is gonna best benefit the health of myself and my family members, but I get the privilege to use that kind of like responsibility and those resources in the best way possible. So what this could look like, and this isn't gonna be like a super realistic scenario, like you guys are gonna have to do your own, but just take the principle, is saying, hey, Bobby, you have the option this weekend to go camping with us, and to go backpacking in the woods and in the tent and to experience the outdoors in this way. Or you can stay at home, but you're not gonna be using the video games. I'm not paying for food. We're gonna be turning the AC off so you can open the windows and you can use your own money to do the food. Now, a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, that's torturing kids, or that's manipulation, or that is abuse. It is not abuse to give kids two options and to let them choose, because if they choose that, they are making the choice to go without AC, to pay for their own food, and to, what was the third thing? Like not have video games? Are you kidding me? Like that is not abuse. And what I'm doing is I'm using my resources and my creative energy to say, hey, I really want you to come backpacking with us, but I'm not gonna make it necessarily an easy choice for you to stay home. Like, I think that's what my money is there for. Like, I get to choose if I always have the AC on or if I always provide internet. And I might even say, like, also I'm gonna unplug the internet. And I know this gets kind of weird because both as like, what are we called? Like, shoot, what's the word I'm looking for? Where you're upper class or first world country. We see those things as basic human rights. I don't see them as basic human rights. Like, I don't feel like we all need 24 access to blazing fast Wi-Fi to be a healthy human being. So I have no problem regulating that to a certain degree, as long as it's done consistently and fairly and openly. So when you give a kid that choice, they are going to be a lot more incentivized to make the choice themselves to go hiking with you. But it's not like you're giving them unlimited options. You're giving them a few certain options and then hoping that they choose the one that you think is best for them. Now, like I said, I know that this is a new thought for a lot of people, and they view it as either taking something away from their child or being overly harsh. But if you don't do something like this, if you don't feel like you have some control over the resources that you're paying for and that you're providing. I mean, it's one thing if they go out and get their own job and they're paying for all their own stuff. I don't even think we'd be having this conversation, right? But when you're paying for the food, you're paying for the rent or mortgage, and then the kids are like living in this alternate value system that you're basically funding, it becomes a lot more of a pertinent issue. And one of the reasons is if you don't assert some sort of like control or persuasion over how your resources get spent, I think you're gonna resent your kids for it. And that's what I sense in a lot of these threads where people say, oh, my kids won't go hiking, they will complain the whole time, but yet they wanna stay home and use the internet and play video games all day. And they make it sound like it's the kids' fault. Well, I would say to the parent, it's actually your fault because you're the one that's providing it and paying for it and giving the kids unlimited options and then blaming them for choosing the easiest option for themselves. So if you don't limit those options, anytime you give something away and it's like in an imbalanced way and not something you want to do, it has the potential for building long-term resentment. So you're gonna kind of like hate your kids for choosing this choice. The second thing I would say is you're not preparing your kids for reality because you're paying for their Wi-Fi, you're paying for their Pizza Hut, you're paying for their video games, you're paying for their data and their phone, and you're kind of basically like spoiling your kids because it's one thing if you say, hey, you can pay for these things yourself and go get a job or use your money accordingly. But when you don't encourage your kids to do hard things, and not only that, you fund their easier, more consumeristic lifestyle, don't be surprised when your kids end up being consumers and choosing the easy way out a lot of times. It's not their fault though, it's because they don't know oftentimes that there's better and long-term gratification in choosing the hard way. So I'm all about using my resources, using my creativity to steer kids in a direction that I believe is healthier for them while still giving them the choice to experiment. And I think this would be a great opportunity to debrief choices. So they go camping, they choose the harder path, and we talk about it. We say, how was that? Was that enjoyable? Okay, there were hard moments. Are you glad you chose it? Why not? Maybe there's even things you can learn as a trip planner to make it better the next time. But sometimes maybe they even choose to stay home, but it's not the glorified version of home with all the conveniences. And you ask them, hey, what did we learn from this experience? Like, was it all good? Was it bad? Like, what did you learn? So anyways, guys, that's what we do and have done historically, not just with backpacking and camping, but with a lot of things. So if you find yourself at home asking this question, how do I get my kids to do the hard thing? And if you, like a lot of people, they hear about what we did, like the hard things we've done, and they say, oh, well, your kids are different. You know, my kids would complain the entire time. To me, no offense, but that is a complete cop-out as a parent. You are not owning the power that you have over your resources to help incentivize your kids. Believe me, our kids have complained a lot on camping trips and hiking trips. We complain a lot, but the way that we've succeeded is by limiting our options, both for ourselves and for our kids at certain times. And I think as a parent, one of the most powerful things you can do is take certain times where you have access to conveniences and to limit your use of them. That's how we get adventure, that's how we get growth, that's how we get learning. And that's the very nature of what hiking and camping is. You're saying like, I could drive, but I'm choosing to walk. It seems crazy sometimes, even to me, but I find that by walking and by going without the microwave and without the cable, parts of me come alive and grow. And I've seen parts of my kids come alive and grow and parts of our relationships come alive and grow. So thank you guys for listening. I'm interested to hear, is this helpful? Is this something you've dealt with at home? And what are other ways that you have incentivized your kids to discover the outdoors without coercion and manipulation? Leave that in the comments below. If you guys want to learn more about this, my new book called 2,000 Miles Together is out. It's about how we hiked with a family of 8, more than 2,000 miles, the entire Appalachian Trail, and set the record for the largest family. And it covers a lot of themes like what I talked about here and some of the dynamics that came up while living life without air conditioning. So this is the trailer to that book. Thanks, guys.